why do I even bother with this painstaking endeavor that requires perseverance in the first place? So, yeah, so this was my big inquiry that I had. And I came to this realization that we tend to focus a lot on the macro, so these results, or did you win or lose? Did you get this podium placement? And we don't really pay attention to what happens on the micro level and all of the happenings of the moment to moment and what sensations and joys that we feel each second that we end up pursuing this activity. So in this investigation of my little relationship with climbing that I have, there was this obvious source of joy which comes from achievement. So that is at the very end of this process. And getting to the top, once you get there, you feel this like onrush of emotions, which is inevitable. But at the micro level, how can we find joy and pleasure? So in those moments in between, what is the source of pleasure? So to me, this comes in this creative freedom that I have when it comes to climbing. And so I view climbing as this outlet to exercise creative agency. And that is, I am able to imagine and like visualize my path prior to even stepping foot on the climb. And this is done before I touch the rock, which is quite beautiful. And okay, maybe go back a slide, sorry. I think that this illustration by Yao Xiao, who illustrated my kids' book, really well represents this, because it's almost like creating this little map internally to figure out how I would like to move my body across this surface, which is the rock. And I think a lot of this is also hugely influenced by my father, who was a Buto dancer, and really gave me this approach to climbing in which creativity was really reinforced and really supported throughout my whole career. And I think to better illustrate this, I want to bring up James J. Gibson's concept of affordances, in which these possible actions that you receive when you're confronted with an object, these are mediated by the dorsal pathway, which is part of the visual system, and it explores these not manifest, but these possible actions, so these latent facts. And ultimately, it just explores what's not real, but it can be brought into being, which I find fascinating. So I think that climbing is this really wonderful exercise of this concept, in that you have this endless source of intrigue, and it is on a micro level because it presents this opportunity to physically actualize these ideas in your mind, every single moment that you end up pursuing climbing. So it's not just in that end feeling or the end moment. And this actually connects well to my next topic, which is the creative agency on the physical level. So what does that look like when you try to execute those ideas in your brain and try to test out those ideas in physical form? So an example that I have here is from a national climbing competition a few years back. And so to set the scene a bit, in a final round of a national climbing competition, you typically have 5 minutes to figure out how you'd like to complete the climb and actually do it. So it's just a very high pressure environment. And I remember for this climb being absolutely stumped on it, and the intended beta, as people say, was much like what other competitors were trying, was to leap from this bottom black feature, which my right foot is resting upon, to this protruding black feature on which my other limbs are on. And to my dismay, this didn't work out for me because dynamic movement really isn't my forte. And this led me to think, what other alternative ways might there be? And somehow, strangely enough, I had this inkling thought of putting my right leg, I guess my left leg actually, way above my head, and strangely enough, it worked. But this pivot of pursuing the more obscure or unlikely path rather than what seems like the intended or more conventional, obvious path was absolutely terrifying. And but it's also just this beautiful part of climbing in which you're able to explore in different ways and find out for yourself what method will work best for you, and given your tools in your arsenal, basically. And as I wrote further down, I view it as testing out your hypothesis in a way, or hypotheses, since it's a stringing together of different predictions of what your body is capable of doing. So those are my microcosmic joys that I find out of climbing. And going back to this topic of grit, I just like to think of it as while gritting through your teeth through this crazy endeavor that you end up pursuing, I think that it's just as important to reflect on what brings you joy on the micro level. Thank you.